Hey guys, welcome to vinylalbumcovers.com. This is The Front, yet another episode of The Front. Can you stand it? So many episodes so close together. This is Dre. It is always Dre. And the last time we kind of did a subgenre thing. But we wanted to do I was kind of thinking maybe it would be good to do something a little more general. Um, and just kind of off the top of my head, I thought, well, what about CDs? What about the compact disc? We're both of an age where we were kind of around at the very beginning of them. Although I am slightly older, but then again, I'm older than everyone, so there's that. Um, but, but I figured we're both of an age where we can kind of have this conversation. So I wanted to ask you first, Dre, like, what is your first memory of the compact disc?
So, as a kid, I knew, I knew all I knew was cassette tapes when I was about 5 or 6. I used to have like a Teddy Ruxpin doll, and I would play like cassette tapes, things like that. So, I was familiar with that, and then I was living in Inglewood at the time, and every so often we would go down to San Diego because my grandma stayed down there, and it had people on my dad's side of the family that stayed down there as well. So, um, my uncle would, he'd pick me up from my grandma's house, and he would take me. We'd go fishing or go to the movies or play video games, whatever. And my uncle used to ride this big, truck or whatever. He had this big truck and everything, and he's Navy, so he had all this decked out and everything. And he always played his music loud, man. He was always go big or go home with him. And I saw him open up something, and I looked, and it was like the circle. Just like, what is that? Slides it in, music just starts playing from it. I must have been like 6 or something like that, and I'm just like, what is that?
Mm.
So I even asked my uncle, what is that? He's like, oh, that's a. He's like, oh, you mean the song? He's like, no, what is that thing you put in there? And he was, oh, that's a CD, nephew. He's like, plays music like a cassette tape. And I was like, oh, you know, and so that was my first memory of the CD, and it took me a while to even get the CDs because I was still right at elementary school. It was still cassette tapes for me. My mom wasn't about to buy no CDs for no 8 or 9 year olds. Like, what do you need CDs for? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 sure.
Back
Yeah.
then CD players were still very expensive. You know what I mean? I'd imagine they were pretty expensive at that time. What, 92, 93. I remember watching the episode of Martin.
No, no, this was 82 when they came out. They came out in
Yeah.
82.
Okay, so I had another story that kind of about the CDs, and it's gonna sound kind of funny, but I was watching an episode of Martin, and his CD player came up missing. You remember this episode?
I don't know. Remind me.
His
I'm
CD his
old. I don't
CD
remember anything.
his CD player came up missing, and so he basically interrogated Pam, and
Wait, I got it. It's
and he
in my
had the
brain. I got
and
you.
he
I
had and
got
he
you.
had the stuffed
Yeah.
dog, and he was making it bark at Cole and all them, and then Brother Man comes in. He's like, man, your CD player was kicking, man. And that too was actually one of my first memories of the CD or the CD player was right then.
Yep.
A funny story, but that's one of the things that I kind of jumped out, when you brought this up, and I was like, I'm gonna talk about that episode of Martin.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I'd
so
forgotten all about that.
yeah, it was a funny episode too. I love that episode, by the way. But yeah, so those are like my first memories of the CD. And then I remember I finally graduated the CDs probably when I was about 14 or 15, when my curiosity for music really began to grow.
Hmm.
And tired of doing the whole sit by the radio, hear a song that I wanted to record and put into the cassette tape and try to get it. And
Bro.
yeah, you
Fair
probably know
after
you probably did that more than I did because you were older than me.
so
I did that a
much.
lot as a kid because I was trying to get the Soul for Real song, Candy Rain. I was in 5th grade. I was like, I got to get this song. And then sometimes I get lucky enough where the DJ would say the name of the song he's about to play, and I would stick the cassette tape in there and push play and everything. But after playing the song for so often, the strings on that stuff they fall apart, and after that, there's no real coming back from that. You know what I mean? And but the CD player, the CD, like I said, probably my first memories were probably when I was about 6, and then finally when I was about 14 or 15, that's when I really like graduated and left cassette tapes behind for good. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember I'm trying to put the year together because I'm 1,000 years old. We've already discerned that. You can tell by the rings on my wrist. Um, but but I think I was probably like 11 or 12. So this would have been.
1702. I'm messing with you.
Are you finished? Um, Jerk. I mean, if I ask for it, you have to do it. but I think I want to say this was like 1984. I'm pretty sure this was 84. I'll date myself. I don't care if you know. But yeah, I remember nobody around me had them. I'd heard about them from a distance, but nobody had them. And then there was a neighbor like across the street and down one house. He was the guy, Jim, was in the military. He was in the army. My father was as well. They knew each other, and I think my father had suggested that house to them when they were looking for some place to live. He and his wife Sue, and they ended up moving into that house. So we had neighbors as friends at that point for a brief period. But I remember I was asked to house sit for them when they went out of town because they had a dog, a big giant dog named Pepper, Springer Spaniel. And I'm doing better with this than I thought I would. But I went over there, and it was like 2 weeks worth of house sitting. So the dog, of course, had to be fed and all that. And they made it very clear, if I felt like, they knew my love of electronics even then. And they're like, if you feel like, playing with the stereo, go ahead, just don't break anything. And I remember they had these big giant speakers. I forget what the vendor was, but I loved them because they were so bassy and so clear. And they're still, like the sound print of those speakers is still in my brain because they were so good. They were floor speakers and just amazing. But I remember I went over the first day and I fed Pepper, of course. And Pepper was a sweetheart. So it played with me consistently, drove me nuts. It was great. But I went over to the stereo and I was looking, and his stereo, I remember the stereo was so clean. It was clearly owned by a guy because of how clean it was and all the lights and stuff was dazzling. And in the unit, there was a Sony CD player. Now, back at that point, again, as you intimated earlier, they were extremely expensive here, but they weren't that expensive in Japan. And he had gone, right, and he had gone to Japan and bought one there and bought some CDs while he was there too. So I don't remember all the CDs that he had, but I remember he had the soundtrack to Flashdance.
Nice.
Why I don't know. And he had a Bee Gees album. I think it was Spirits Having Flown, and he had these. And this was considered old by then, but these were among the first CDs that they had produced, along with Thriller and a Billy Joel album and a couple of other things. There weren't a bunch of anything at that point.
Right.
But I saw it. I saw this player, and I didn't know what it was. And there was no one around to ask. I was by myself. So it was up to me to kind of try to figure it out on the fly. And then I saw those, I don't have one here, I have one over there, but there was this jewel case, the CD jewel cases. What the heck is this? And so I grabbed it, and I was very gentle because I certainly didn't want to break anything. I'd been told not to after all. And I opened it up. I figured out how to open the thing. I knew nothing at all. And I opened it, and there was this silver disc in there with writing on it. I went, huh. This is obviously a compact disc. And nobody said CD back then. They said compact disc. Because it was all new back at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was no abbreviation. It was just compact disc. And so I took the thing out, and I saw open on the front of the thing. And so I hit that, and the drawer came out, and that was exciting. And I was literally just learning on the fly. Nobody was around to tell me anything. And I put the CD into the tray the way it seemed to go. And it was the first time I put it in, it was upside down. And I closed the door, and of course it didn't do anything, and it opened again. And I went, oh, it must go in the other way. So I flipped it around and I played it. I think it was the Flashdance CD, and I started hearing the theme to Flashdance immediately. And while the music didn't do too much for me, the clarity really struck me. And the fact that there was no clicks or pops or anything like that, the way we'd gotten used to LPs sounding, but there was also no tape hiss. And I was fascinated, immediately fascinated by the clarity of the music on it. So that was my first memory. And I just kept listening to it, just appreciating in my sound engineer mind, just appreciating the clarity of it and that music could sound that good. Of course, many years later, I realized that that's not really always the case, and that it's very much dependent on the source, et cetera, et cetera. But that's
Right.
doesn't need to get Greek just yet. But that was kind of what my first experience was, and I really was just as this I think I was probably only about 11, like I said, and it really was a mind-blowing thing because I had never seen anything like that before. And I realized it was working on lasers. And lasers, really?
Yeah,
Like,
that's another thing that when I first got my first CD player, being able to skip a track, like not having to like sit there and fast forward and then stop, make fast, you know what I mean? Like you just boom,
yes,
like that's crazy,
and
man.
not
Like
having to pick a needle up and move it. Like,
yeah, that yeah, Divine, yeah. Well, that's a whole different. Yeah, I wasn't around for that,
oh,
but yeah,
you
it,
okay?
it was just mind blowing, man. Like I was just like, well, I can skip a track and it'll take me all the way to the beginning of the next. Like how does that happen? Like it was crazy,
Mhm.
you know? Like I'd never seen nothing like that before.
So, okay, so what was your first CD player? Do you remember what it was?
It might have been I think it was a Discman or I don't know who.
Oh, you had a Sony Discman at first?
Yeah, I think it was a Sony CD player. Yeah,
Was it a Sony? Okay.
it was a Sony. I got it when I was about I think I was might have been like eighth grade or something like that. I don't remember. You
I
know,
hate to age you, but what year are we talking?
about 97, 98.
Oh gosh, you child. I can't stand you.
Yeah, because I remember it was around the time DMX's first album came out, and I want to get a CD player. So I want to listen to this in a CD player, and so yeah.
My gosh, there's an age difference here I was not aware of. Wow. Okay, continue. I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
mean to
so
cut you off.
that
I'm
was my first
shocked.
memory because I remember the very first album I listened to on a CD player that I owned was a DMX album. So, and I was about 13, 14 at that time, and yeah,
My gosh.
yeah. And it's funny because I learned there were certain like tricks you can do with a CD player. Like you can open it up while the thing is still spinning, pop out, and the thing will still spin and still play the song, even though the CD's not even in there. Have you ever tried doing that before?
Oh yeah, because those Discmans. Well, this was a later edition of CD player, but those Discmans had memory buffers in them,
Yeah, crazy.
so
Yeah,
they
'cause
wouldn't skip.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like a lens inside of them as well.
Oh yeah, they all had the lenses. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to play around and do stuff like that. I don't know why I did it, but I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I had one that I had so mine was not as technologically advanced as Dre's was. This was like I got my first one in 1988, um, and it was horrible. It was this top-loading crown thing. It was shaped like it wasn't a small unit at all. It certainly wasn't anything you could call
Was it
portable.
silver?
No, it was black.
Okay,
It was black and it was made by a company called Crown. It was
okay,
wretched. But it was I was given it as a present. So I thought it was the greatest thing ever because I could finally play CDs.
right.
And I remember the first CD I was given was Simple Pleasures by Bobby McFerrin. I still have that CD. I've never let it
Don't
go. Like
worry,
that was the first CD I had. Why are you
oh my
judging?
goodness,
You judge.
that's not the way to go, man.
No, it is, and I'll tell you why it is. Because no, but aside from "Don't Worry, Be Nappy," like there were other things on it, and the cool thing about it is, and my mother knew what she was doing because she knew me, obviously, but she knew that I appreciated the sound quality every bit as much as I would appreciate whatever music was on it, and this thing
Mm,
was purely a cappella from beginning to end.
mm,
So the clarity possible on that CD, it's still one of the best sounding CDs I've ever owned. Still,
mm,
because of how clear it is. Remember,
right.
there's a track on it that he wrote called "Drive."
I remember that.
You remember that song?
Yeah.
I remember he performed it live on Saturday Night Live with just by himself. It was dazzling. The man's ridiculously talented, but the way it bounced around on the speakers and it was so clear and crispy and delicious. And I mean, I absolutely fell in love with it, with the format just as a whole, like listening to that. And I still, I mean, like I said, I still have that CD, and
Hmm.
it has more than earned its keep in that regard because it showed me what was actually possible. Not many CDs lived up to that, to be fair, but it showed what could be possible with just when it's just the human voice and there's no instruments and there's no real hiss or anything
Yeah.
like that. It just sounded phenomenal. It's a great sounding CD. And I forget what else I was. Oh, I know what it was, and I don't know why she gave me this, but it was Chicago's Greatest Hits. She thought that was a good idea
Really, that's an interesting one.
for me. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, I some of it's fine, but it didn't show off the CD that well. So
Yeah.
I kind of went, well, that's nice, you know. Um, yeah, but those were kind of like the first two CDs I got. But the Bobby McFerrin more than proved itself and kind of showed me what, you know, what was possible. So I always really really appreciated that about that
Okay.
CD. I've kept it all these years even.
Yeah.
But yeah, that nasty crown thing that I had, and I kept it for I think I had it for 2 years because we couldn't afford anything else, of course. And then I ended up getting a Fisher a couple of years afterwards, and that was much better. So
What is the name? There was a it wasn't like a portable CD player. It was one of the big ones that you had to put in your home, like a CD, like whole system that would play CDs. It was silver. I mean, it was like kind of tall, and it had these. You know what I'm talking? Do you remember what I'm talking about? Like everybody had this, like in the late '80s, early '90s. It was. I'm pretty sure Disc made it. Discman might have made this. I think it was like a. I'd have to find a picture of it, but it was like a tall silver thing, and it played CDs and it played tapes and it played vinyls too. But it was like a what is it? I can't think of the name of it.
you
If
don't mean a component system?
it might have been something like that, but it was like everybody had this. So that was like the thing to have at the time. I remember my dad had one, my uncle had one, and a couple other people that I knew had one, like older people that I knew had one. And
You
whenever
mean
like a house party, they'd always play stuff from that thing.
you must mean a component system.
That could be it.
You must.
And it was always silver.
Yeah, some of them were. Yeah, some of them were black, but like Jim's wasn't in a tower configuration because it was all separate components. But he had
Okay.
everything there. He had like was it a Technics 1200 turntable, which I have now. I have one
Right.
of those. And then he had a separate CD player, and I'm pretty sure it was a Sony, and then a separate tuner and etc. So he had all these pieces and a separate tape deck, a dual weld cassette deck, and all that other stuff, and a reel to reel player, which also fascinated me, but it was older. And now I have a reel to reel player, of course, because of what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the CD really kind of, I think, certainly based on what I was used to, because I was used to, just kind of either getting it from vinyl or getting it from cassettes, or LPs. They're not vinyl, but it was a real revelation in the ease of use, just like with you. Like that's what
Mhm.
struck me. Like, oh, I don't have to rewind. Like
Yeah.
I can just hit
I
the
mean, you
track
could
and
if
go
you
to
wanted
it.
to. And that's another thing about the CD player. You could actually hold down the rewind button or the fast forward button and get to a particular,
Oh,
point in
but
the.
that was later. That
Oh, that
was
was later
that
too.
it didn't
Okay.
come right away that way. You
Okay.
couldn't at first. I remember on the Crown I couldn't,
Okay.
and on the Fisher I couldn't either. But that was actually later,
Okay.
believe it or not. And I think Sony's responsible for getting us to that.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
I remember discovering that too. Now I was just mind blown by the whole experience. And like you said, the sound quality. I'm hearing stuff in songs that I heard a bunch of times that I had never heard before, and I'm just like, what is that? Like what?
do you remember the warning that used to appear? This will test your age. Do you remember the warning that used to appear on the back of CDs on the bottom, on the back of the cases?
What would it say? It was just a warning label or just.
This music was recorded on analog equipment. We have attempted to preserve as closely as possible the sound of the original recording.
Yeah, wasn't it like a black and white sticker, like a
No,
black.
it was literally just printed on it.
Okay, huh? Now I guess I don't remember that then.
Yeah, because it was mostly on the back of like Warner CDs. You would get this warning,
Okay,
because obviously, that it was coming off of tapes and the source
yeah,
material was tapes. And everybody thought that it's so funny. Everybody back then thought that was such a liability. It's not. It never was. That's actually the best possible thing. But they would put that there because they had the big advertisement for compact disc was the lack of tape hiss.
yeah,
But of course, that couldn't totally be promised in most cases because the source material was tape. So of course you're going to get hiss from tape moving at 15 IPS. Like there's no getting around it. You're going to get some of that. But
yeah.
it's not a liability. It just means you're getting everything on the tape or getting as much off the tape as you can
Right.
with that format. So, but yeah, that warning was all over everything. The MCA CDs had a different warning that actually spelled out tape hiss, which was pretty funny. I forget their warning, but they all had like permutations of of that warning because everything was coming off a tape at that point when it was brand new. Certainly by the time of
Okay.
DMX, there was digital recording and Pro Tools, and
Yeah.
so things were, on the whole, everything was digital at that point. But in the early days, it was all just, they were literally just digital tape recorders that were capturing the end result. Like you'd go into a studio, with your typical 24-track 2-inch tape, and record, and then bounce that down to 1/4-inch half track, which is the thinner tape that was on the open reel kind of thing, and that tape would go off to mastering to create the vinyl, and then that tape would also go to the CD mastering plant, and they'd record that digitally. And it's kind of like it's, I don't want to get too Greek or anything, but CDs are essentially made much like photographs are made,
Okay.
with fixer and the whole nine. So it's kind of it's not so much a sound process as it is a photographic process.
I got a question for you. I mean, this is probably before your time, but when did when were people able to play cassettes inside their vehicle? So I can imagine that wasn't always a thing.
No, I think this was like I believe this was like the mid 60s
Oh, cassette. Okay.
when that was finally possible. Cassettes themselves, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think they showed up in like the 60s.
Okay.
And they
And because
initially showed up as a dictation
okay.
format.
And the Walkman was what, the late 70s or the early mid 70s?
No, Walkman was 1979 and then forward for a long time after.
Oh, so that's not that. So that's not even that. You know, there's not really that big of a gap between the Walkman and the CD player then.
No, not really. In fact, they overlapped for a lot of years.
Huh?
A
Because like I
long
said,
time.
I just remember like, and it could be because I was in elementary school, so obviously kids couldn't afford CD players, and I doubt many people's parents are going to buy a CD player for a kid in elementary school. But all I remember was just Walkmans. Everybody had Walkmans. You know, I don't really remember people having CD players that often. You know, but yeah, once I got the ball rolling, man, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. A year later, I probably had like 500 CDs or something like that.
Gosh.
It was crazy, man. I became
Woo!
I became a music junkie. I had those, remember those big CD cases, those black ones. You open them up and you put your CDs in them.
I still have 2 of them. Yes.
I had like by the time I was 15, I probably had like 3 of those things.
Gosh.
And then when I discovered how to burn a CD, when I discovered that in Napster,
But that's later.
yeah.
Leave that for later. Don't go there. Don't go there. That's later.
Oh boy,
All
man,
of
when
that
I-
is later. Hold up. Keep it chronological, bro. Keep it chronological.
yeah, but
We'll get
yeah,
there. We're going there. We're going there.
you know, I had a job back in groceries, you know, so had my own money coming in. It was nice, you know.
You were rolling in it by any standard at that age.
Yeah, I mean, it was back in groceries, but hey, it's money, you know what I mean? You know,
No, it is. Yeah. Especially
14 years old.
when you can keep it all.
Yeah, when you're 14 years old and you got $400 coming in every month. I know that's not a lot now, but $400 a month as a 14-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Oh, no, if it's all yours and you can spend it all, that is a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have that kind of surplus at the end of a month. I'm just saying. Like, I don't.
Yeah, so I mean, I worked hard for my money. I hustle, man, because I remember.
Thank you, Donna Summer. Continue.
Yeah, but yeah, just being
You didn't catch it.
Donna Summer. Yeah,
Never mind. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I
I
got
had
it
to.
hard for the money, but yeah, but I just remember like seeing people and stuff like seniors and stuff like that having this and having that, and it's like I got to get me a job, man. And so, you know, a lot of places weren't hiring people that were under 16, but I was able to find a job at a local commissary. And he's like, yeah, it was just fine. You can, you work, I worked, 3 days a week or whatever. My mom had to sign a waiver for me. But
Yeah, I know. I remember. Work permit.
she was,
I had one.
yeah, she was happy with it. Then my stepdad was like, thank God, I ain't got to buy you a bunch of stuff no more. You know what I mean? But I was happy to just have my own money, not having to go to my parents for everything. You know what I mean?
So you could fund your habit. Yeah.
Yeah, because they weren't gonna buy me. They weren't gonna buy me They weren't gonna buy me a CD at the whim just because I wanted one. They weren't gonna do that.
Of course not. Yeah.
Like I know a lot of kids' obsession in high school was like shoes and Jordans. Mine was CDs though. That was my.
Oh, mine was both. I had a
Yeah.
problem with both of them because I still am a sneakerhead. I just don't
Yeah.
indulge it that often. But
I mean,
CDs,
I bought some shoes back then, but it wasn't like I didn't have an obsession with it though. You know what I mean? Like there were other things that I wanted. I actually preferred having like shirts and jeans over like really nice shoes. Kind of backwards, but for that time. But
what's the matter with you? No, I'm
I was
kidding.
big into food. I was big into food back then too.
Oh, were you? No, I was
Yeah.
very much a sneakerhead and very much a CD head or music
Yeah.
head just in general. I remember. So okay, so your first one was Jay-Z and DMX.
Right.
Those are the first two. Unfortunately, because I have to dig back a little further into my memory banks,
Mm,
it's harder for me to figure out which one of these two came first. It was
mm.
either Motown. So Motown, my children, Motown used to come out with these two albums on one CD things. Do you remember those?
Yeah, I actually bought one when I was about 16.
Did you? Okay. Yeah, they had I remember there was one the one that I bought was it was the Commodores.
Okay.
It had the Commodores, it had the entire Commodores, and then it had the Heroes album, one right after the other.
Okay.
And it appeared on one CD, and it sounded fantastic. And why I threw it away, I will never know. But because it sounded better than the remasters, so much better.
Yeah.
Um, but that was we thought remasters were better back then. We were idiots, but that's what we thought. But I bought that. I think that was the first one I bought, and I think on the heels of it, if I'm not mistaken, was It Must Be Magic by Tina Marie.
Oh,
If
cool. Okay.
that may have been first, I'm not exactly sure. It's one or the other, though. I remember getting one of, I think I got both of them from, there's a Tower Records location that was in over by George Washington University, which is now a CVS, because why? Um,
They're everywhere, man.
it's heartbreaking. I can't even drive by it anymore. But I refuse to accept that it's a CVS now. It's just it's wrong on so many levels. But those were for sure the first two, and they both
Mm,
sound really really good on the format. I still, knowing what I know now, I still prefer them both in vinyl form, and I have the albums for both.
yeah.
But the CDs were pretty good, so they knew what they were doing for sure. You know what I hate? I hate it when videos go on forever. Like they just drone on and on and on. And even if what they're saying is interesting, there's only so much you can watch of a video before you just get sick of it. So we're going to go ahead and stop this one before you get sick of it. And we're going to pick up in another couple days with the next part of it. And really, it'll only be another couple days. But we just didn't want this one to go on too long. So we're going to sign off for now. And don't forget to like the video. It's important. We're kind of a young channel, so likes and things like that are really, really important. And subscribe to the channel. I mean, if you don't subscribe to the channel, you won't see the next part of this, right? So it's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, you're enjoying this. You must be. You're watching this after all, aren't you? I mean, who watches stuff like this? Anyway, just yeah, go ahead and click and subscribe and stuff like that. It's worth it, I promise. And by the way, yeah, we have a newly added section now. It only took me years to figure that one out, but it's finally there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Much appreciated, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right, y'all, later.